Moving on. Our main story tonight concerns homelessness. And I know that we are by no means the first show to cover this subject. Many have tried, and perhaps none more memorably than the criminally cancelled Tyra Banks show.
I wanted to understand what their lives are really like and walk a day in their shoes. No makeup, no lights, nothing but me and the street. I stopped at 2 kids in the street playing ball.
Hi, my name is Tyra. Hi, what's your name?
My name's Franklin.
Franklin?
I mean, there is so much going on there, but I want to focus on Franklin's face, because that is the face of a kid who's definitely figured out the secret identity of the woman who had a camera crew, looked like Tyra Banks, and introduced herself saying, "Hi, my name is Tyra." But despite Tyra's best efforts, homelessness is still a huge problem in this country. For the 4th consecutive year, it increased nationwide, with the most recent count suggesting there are over 580,000 people experiencing homelessness in America. But the truth is, it is likely way more than that, because that annual count only includes people that surveyors could find on the streets or in shelters on a single night last year, a system that misses countless people. And not just that, experts project the pandemic recession could cause chronic homelessness to increase 49% over the next 4 years. And with this rise in homelessness has come a corresponding rise in the rhetoric around it, exemplified by segments like this.
We came out just to have some fun.
It's a great time. Everybody's safe.
It's America. It's my home.
This used to be one of the crown jewels of Austin, but as you can see, another tent city.
A guy's walking around here with a machete, threatening people.
It started with box cutters as a weapon. Now we joke that we're the machete capital of Texas.
Okay, hold on. I'm not saying that someone walking around with a machete isn't scary, but you are making an outlier seem like the norm there, and you've gone out of your way to make it scarier with visual effects. And you can make anything frightening that way. Here, I'll show you. Here is a bit of fun, just Shaquille O'Neal dancing with the Jabberwockies. Oh God, oh no, now it's terrifying! Leave him alone, Jabberwockies! Leave Shaq alone! Run, Shaq, just run! And look, I know it is easy to criticise Fox News for being alarmist. Alarmism is their whole thing, that and airing ads for pills that make your dick go bongo. But the truth is, even some residents of Austin, famously a blue dot in a red state, have said it's been a struggle to reconcile their feelings about their homeless neighbours.
Do you think if you had seen this issue happening in another city and it wasn't happening in your neighborhood, you would feel differently?
Once you're in the middle of it, you change your mind of how you approach the situation. But as your safety declines, so does your compassion. Every time I have to pick up human shit, my liberalness just got lowered one more notch.
Wow, that is very honest. Every time I have to pick up human shit, my liberalism gets lowered is quite the sentence. Although I'm surprised it was heard in this context and not in a leaked recording from an Amy Klobuchar staff meeting. And look, again, I am not saying that that is a nice situation to be presented with, but far too often, stories focusing on homelessness are presented solely through the lens of how it affects those with homes, when in reality it is obviously the people without them who need the real help. And the demonization of the homeless community in Austin may well have contributed to incidents like this.
We had so many people throw glass bottles from their cars at our tents and said, "Y'all white trash, y'all need to get a job, y'all need to get housing, y'all don't need to be out on the streets."
Or some would yell out, "Go home." It's like, this is technically our home.
Right. And that is obviously horrible, although I will say no one screaming out of a car window has ever said anything worthwhile. It's like giving a eulogy through flash mob. The method of delivery alone is just immediately disqualifying. The story of homelessness in this country is grounded in a failure of perception, compounded by failures of policy. So tonight, let's look at the way homelessness is talked about, how the problem is currently being made worse, and what could actually help. And like so many things, the modern version of this issue was turbocharged by Ronald Reagan, who came to power at a time when homelessness was increasing and made the problem far worse by cutting programs for the poor and slashing housing subsidies by 75%, making it pretty galling that Reagan regularly made arguments like this.
One problem that we've had even in the best of times, and that is the people who are sleeping on the grates, the homeless who are homeless, you might say, by choice.
I'm sorry, homeless by choice? Look, there were lots of things from 1984 that we could have used an undo button for. Long Doc Dong, most of Temple of Doom, this extremely unfortunate Jell-O ad. But Reagan's quarter-arse thoughts on homelessness are near the top of that list. And that notion that homelessness isn't related to economic policies, but simply reflects the problems of the individuals experiencing it, still informs the way it's discussed today. Here is Dr. Drew, of all people, talking to Seth Green, of all people, and pushing back on the notion that the homeless crisis in LA might have anything to do with a shortage of affordable housing.
This isn't a housing problem.
It's not?
No.
What is
That's a hoax. That's a hoax being perpetrated by the government here locally. They need to stop.
That there isn't, because it seems like...
Of course we have housing expense issues, but we just absorbed 1 million illegal undocumented immigrants without a home, without a country, without a job, without a penny. We absorbed them. They found a place to live. It's a hoax. So it's a mental health crisis and addiction crisis. Full on.
Oh, okay then. I certainly don't see why we wouldn't innately trust Dr. Drew confidently mouth-splooging bullshit theories to Dr. Evil's son, but a few notes on what he said there. Set aside the nonsense that undocumented immigrants don't experience homelessness, because experts will tell you that they very much do. They're just less likely to avail themselves of services because of the whole undocumented thing. Instead, let's address the notion that all of this is down to mental health and addiction, because yes, many who are homeless do struggle with both those things, and those people are often the most visible. But by no means all of them. Also, in many cases, those struggles can be the result of being homeless and not the cause of it. The truth is, there are many reasons someone might find themselves without housing: medical debt, job loss, fleeing domestic violence, being kicked out of their homes because their parents don't approve of their sexuality, or being recently released from prison, or just the overriding fact that housing costs are rising much faster than wages. Currently, 70% of all extremely low-income families are spending more than half their income on rent. And only 37 affordable and available homes exist for every 100 extremely low-income renter households. And that is a startlingly low number, especially considering just how much this country loves watching TV shows about homes. Little homes, humongo homes, homes for ghosts, and homes remodeled by weirdo twins who definitely shower together, to name just a few of them. The point here is, it doesn't take much for people to suddenly find themselves without stable housing, as this woman found out.
2 years ago, Priscilla had a full-time job at a health clinic for the homeless. Her husband, Ryan, stayed home to care for their 2 sons. The youngest has severe autism. They lived on a tight budget, and then their landlord raised the rent $150.
That's a lot of money for a lot of people that live paycheck by paycheck, and we live like that.
The family was evicted, and in a place they never imagined, homeless themselves, living in their car.
I work at a homeless clinic and I'm homeless. How the heck does that happen to me?
Yeah, that is an awful situation to be in. You never want to find yourself suddenly saying, "How did this happen to me?" With the sole exception of being if you are knee-deep in Stanley Tucci's sheets. And even then, why question it? You're swimming in Tooch. Poppermint. This is going to be a delight. So, despite Reagan's confidence, there can be not much choice in the matter after all. As for those outward signs of homelessness that raise such alarm, they are typically the result of public policy choices that we have made. Remember that woman complaining about human shit? That is actually a common thread in coverage of the homeless. In LA, you can find multiple stories about human feces near homeless encampments. But it's worth knowing there is a reason for that.
Most of the city's hundreds of encampments are nowhere near a public toilet. In fact, LA has only 16 mobile toilet stations for its 36,000 homeless people. To make matters worse, with no funding for round-the-clock security, the city hauls away these toilets at night, leaving the homeless no choice but to go on the streets.
What the fuck to all of that? From the amount of public toilet stations available being less than the amount of Bond movies, to shuffling those very minimal toilets away like they're going to turn into a pumpkin at midnight. And while that clip is from just before the pandemic, which prompted city officials to increase toilet stations, there are still currently only 55 accessible 24/7. So the next time you complain about human shit in the street, maybe think about what it would be like if someone padlocked your bathroom every night. You too would suddenly be getting really creative really fast. And it seems the impulse behind many local policies surrounding unhoused people isn't so much to help them as to punish them for their existence and keep them out of sight. You're probably familiar with hostile architecture designed to prevent homeless people from sitting and lying on certain property. It's why you'll sometimes see spikes under bridges like this, or benches with dividers to prevent anyone lying down. And one city went even beyond architecture.
Debate raging over a Florida city playing children's music at a park pavilion at night to keep homeless people away. People say the music rotates between Baby Shark and this song.
Cheese.
It's raining tacos. Raining tacos.
It's true. They pumped the song Raining Tacos at people when they were just trying to sleep, which is completely inhumane. Nobody deserves that. Also, and I know this isn't the key point, that song doesn't deserve it either, because it is a certified banger. Take a listen.
It's raining tacos. Out in the street. Tacos. All you can eat. Lettuce and shells. Cheese and meat. It's raining tacos.
Stop. I would love to play you more, but the problem is this show would then get too fun and I'd spend the rest of the show dancing in the aisles with you and Ellen would literally kill me. But it is not just spikes and songs. More and more city ordinances have been put into place criminalising behaviours associated with being homeless. Over the course of 13 years, citywide bans on camping have increased by 92%, on sitting or lying by 78%, on loitering and panhandling by 103%, and on living in vehicles by 213%. So when you hear fear-mongering about rising crime among the homeless, it's worth asking yourself if those crimes were actually crimes or just someone sat down. Take Kenneth Schultz, a 71-year-old homeless man who told reporters, "Sometimes I just get exhausted and boom, sit down, that's it, you're trespassing." In the 9 years he's been homeless, he's been charged with trespassing 96 times and has spent 1 of every 3 nights in jail. And think about what that means. It means he spent 3 of the last 9 years behind bars. In what way is that man being helped? You cannot arrest someone out of homelessness in the same way that you can't sing someone out of bankruptcy. One thing doesn't remotely lead to the other, and you're just going to end up making things worse, even if you're singing this.
It's raining tacos. It's raining tacos.
No, turn it off. I am warning you, Ellen is sharpening her knives as we speak. She'll do it. It won't be the first time. And criminalising homelessness exposes already vulnerable populations to unnecessary interactions with the police. Unhoused people of colour are more likely to be cited, searched and have property taken than white people experiencing homelessness, and those with multiple marginalised identities like LGBTQ+ people of colour are even more vulnerable to these laws. And if you're thinking, well, hold on, why don't homeless people just go to shelters? There can be a lot of problems with that. Some cities simply don't have enough beds for everyone. In Oakland, for example, in 2019, there were 457 beds available for more than 4,000 unhoused people, meaning they couldn't provide everyone with a bed, even if they Willy Wonkered the situation. And if I may, I'd actually like to pause at this point for just a quick tangent. So put 40 seconds on the clock, please. Regarding this, I don't mind Charlie's grandparents sleeping in one bed. Everyone always asks, but what about when they have to fuck? Do they fuck separately or all do it together? To which I say, I don't care, and I hope so. They're not related by blood, they're related by their children's marriage. It's not their fault they have to share one rickety bed. Grandpa George is going to want to make love to Grandma Georgina. They've shared a life together, and Grandpa Joe is obviously going to want to get it in Grandma Josephine. That's the mother of his children, but at a certain point, if you don't invite the couple sleeping in the same bed to join in, it is just rude. So the next time you talk shit about Charlie Bucket's elder sexual proclivities, ask yourself this: are they the problem, or were you just raised in a puritanical society that shames any sexual deviation from the quote-unquote norm? Oh, that's my time. That's my time. I said my piece. Back to the sad stuff. The point is, some cities don't have enough shelter beds, and even in those that have many, like here in New York, they are not always an option for everyone. Some might not want to split up their family or part with their pets, or are simply wary of bringing their only possessions around a room full of strangers. But also, the key problem with saying, why don't people just go to shelters, is that shelters are only a stopgap solution, because you don't live in a shelter, you just sleep in one, as this woman points out.
It's very, very rough. I would rather stay on the streets. And this is why I understand when I see a lot of homeless people, why they're on the streets. The shelter degrades you. I work part-time. I went from a full-time job to a part-time job being in the shelter. Wow. Because there's just too much going on. I have to be in at 8 o'clock every night. Yeah. If I'm not in at 8 o'clock, I lose that bed. You wake up at 5 o'clock, you have to be out of there at 7 o'clock, regardless.
Yeah, an 8 p.m. curfew and a 7 a.m. kick out the door. So if pulling yourself up by your bootstraps involves working nights, I'm sorry, you're shit out of luck. And if you're thinking, no, John, surely a shelter eventually helps people get back on their feet. Everything worthwhile in life takes time. I read that on a pillow once. Well, think again, because just look what happened when the person who filmed that woman caught up with her almost 8 years later.
You talked about going in and out of the shelter system. And that's still happening.
And that's still happening. They place you, they let you go. They move you, they let you go. They get your money from the government, they let you go, and you're still misplaced.
Yeah, the shelter system has done nothing to change her circumstance. And I will be the first to admit here, it's impossible for me to understand just how hard that cycle is. I've been lucky enough to have always lived in an apartment or a house, or most recently, an infinite white void run by an abusive landlord. That was hard in its own way, but it was nothing compared to a potentially life or death game of musical beds. So if all we've mentioned so far tonight, poking homeless people with spikes, blasting them with music and locking them up, doesn't solve this problem, what does? Well, this housing advocate has a bold new idea.
The solution is simple. This is what the solution is. This is the only thing that ends homelessness, is this right here, house keys.
Exactly. House keys. In other words, give the homeless homes. It's the solution you've probably been shouting at your TV for the past 15 minutes, or, let's be honest, shouting at your laptop, or, if we're being really honest, shouting at your phone during your Monday morning shit. And if you are annoyed that I wasted your time taking the scenic route here, let me make it up to you with another excellent clip from the Tyra Banks show. There is some context for that, but the truth is, it honestly wouldn't make it make much more sense. Now, some will say, sure, giving the homeless homes is an obvious solution, but before that, they need to be sober and have a job. But it's just not that simple. Set aside that dealing with sobriety or your mental health issues is hard enough when you are not living on the streets. Getting a job is often, if not contingent on, at least aided by having an address. That is why advocates endorse an approach called Housing First. It prioritises helping people get a place to live, but also offer support like mental health and addiction services. We've actually tried a version of this with homeless veterans before, and it had some real success.
The first step of this new model is a permanent house, funded mostly at government expense, with services then added around the resident. It's called permanent supportive housing, and that's what Lendl C. found himself in. C. lives in this complex that houses only formerly homeless veterans. While there is no firm program that he has to follow, he has access to support services, including on-site case managers, mental health counseling, substance abuse treatment, and even a community garden.
It feels good. Sometimes I walk around the apartment, no TV or nothing on, and just singing for no reason at all. And then I catch myself doing it, and I start to laughing. I say, you must be going crazy now. But I'm just happy. It feels good.
That is a very nice thing to see. It's like two babies hugging, or four grandparents absolutely railing each other. It's something that just fills you with hope. And thanks to this Housing First strategy, the number of homeless veterans dropped from 74,000 in 2010 to 38,000 in 2018, a near 50% reduction. And supportive housing is just one version of what this can look like. For those recently made homeless, rapid rehousing provides short-term rental assistance and services to help people get back on their feet quickly. And look, Housing First programs clearly require significant resources and funding, but it is not like our current approach is cheap. One study in Florida that tracked a decade's worth of spending on just 107 chronically homeless people found that just between money spent on incarceration and emergency medical treatment, their communities and local governments had spent an average of just over $31,000 per person per year, when the estimated cost of providing with permanent supportive housing would have only been around $10,000 per year. So if your argument against housing for the homeless was purely monetary, congratulations, your concerns have been answered. Also, a pre-congratulations for being visited by 3 ghosts this upcoming Christmas Eve. But funding is not the only issue here. A huge obstacle in implementing these sorts of programs is opposition from local residents. It is the NIMBY problem, not in my backyard, and it happens absolutely everywhere. Take Claremont, California, where new developments offering affordable housing, including those geared to the homeless, were proposed, only to encounter fierce community pushback like this.
You don't need to put it in our backyard.
It's not fair.
But what they're doing is past crazy.
Well, it's just going to go downhill. If you bring all that in, all their riffraff, I don't need it.
It's just not the right place. I agree that they need help. I agree that they need to find a location, but Claremont's not the location to be had.
How is that going to impact crime? How is that going to impact the businesses out here? If they're low income, are they going to be spending money at the sushi place or not?
Oh no, not the sushi place! I didn't realise a prerequisite for housing was a willingness to spend Friday nights deep-throating nigiri. As for that guy saying, I agree they need to find a location, just not here, where then? Because you do get just because someone leaves your site doesn't mean they stop existing, right? It's a concept that we all learned pretty early on after about 8 months of absolutely terrifying games of peekaboo. And Claremont is by no means an isolated example. In North Texas, local residents mobilised against a proposed affordable housing project, which had units set aside for residents using housing choice or Section 8 vouchers, basically rental subsidies for low-income or homeless individuals. And here is how one opponent of the project explained herself.
The lifestyle, I feel like, goes with Section 8 is usually working maybe single moms or people who are struggling to keep their heads above water. And it's not, I feel so bad saying that, but it's not, it's just not people who are, I guess, of the same class as us, which sounds bad, but I don't mean that in a bad way.
Do you think that you maybe are stereotyping the folks?
Oh, I totally am, 100%. It's not, it works both ways. I'm definitely not a racist and I'm not bigot, but I think I hold a little bit of a stigma against people who are different.
OK, some quick corrections there. You don't feel that bad saying it. The things you're saying are things racists and bigots say. And saying I'm not a racist or a bigot, but also saying you have a stigma against people who are different isn't necessarily splitting hairs, but it's definitely segregating them. While that woman lives in a conservative area of Texas, plenty of the places you've seen tonight and plenty of the places where these sentiments run deepest are deep blue liberal cities. The truth is, some of you watching this right now may share some of those views. And if you do, I implore you to take in every word of this formerly unhoused mother, Kiana K. Scott, who wrote a letter to the NIMBYs in her hometown.
You wear your bias like a badge of honor when you see my history. You judge me for having children, for needing assistance. You hate me for wanting the stability you take for granted. And why? Because you didn't like looking the other way when you saw me on the street? Or is it simply because I make you uncomfortable and your discomfort is enough to disqualify a person from the American dream?
Exactly. She's absolutely right. It is not the housed's comfort that needs to be prioritised right now. So if you're wondering why homelessness continues to get worse in this country, one reason is that there are a lot of people, even liberals, who believe that homelessness is a personal failing, poverty can be avoided, and their own good fortune makes them not only better than the unhoused, but more worthy of comfort. It is basically Reagan's attitude from a Whole Foods crowd. And I do not want to oversimplify the logistics involved here. It will take a massive commitment in infrastructure, funding, and resources. But the very first step here is a collective change of perceptions. Basically, we need to stop being dicks and assuming that the unhoused are a collection of drug addict criminals who've chosen this life for themselves instead of people suffering the inevitable consequences of gutted social programs and a nationwide divestment from affordable housing. I really hope that is one of the 2 key things that sticks in your head from tonight's show. The other, of course, being this. That's our show. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next week. Good night.